And why don't we go ahead and talk about it, Sean?
Let's do it.
The college football season is now in the rearview mirror as the Indiana Hoosiers are your 2026 college football playoff national champions. You see the bracket there on the video side. Boy, did it feel good to gray out that Hurricanes logo, man.
I bet it did.
I am not gonna lie. I hated having to put it in there in the first place, and then it wouldn't go away, and then finally did. But a heck of a game, 27-21, and in a game that at times felt not that close. Miami, kind of made a push in the fourth quarter, ended up falling short.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the second half was like Indiana creating a gap, and then like Miami shortening the gap, and then pulling away, and then short. It wasn't like I mean, I get within one score, I get that it's a game, but it's not like they pulled ahead and Indiana had to fight back or anything like that.
Yeah. Indiana was kind of in control most of the way. Just there was a short pocket of time. But really, when you kind of look at it, just there was the 2nd and 1 on that last touchdown drive for Indiana where they had the false start, and for the first time in the game, you thought, "Oh man, this one might be changing." And then, they end up going for it on 4th down. After putting the field goal kicking team out, calling the timeout, putting your offense back on the field, and not only do you get a first down, you get the touchdown, the game winner on the QB draw. Miami has an opportunity to come back and score, possibly win, as it's only a 6-point lead. But Carson Beck, as he's done I think I saw today, the 6 losses in Carson Beck's career in college have all finished with a Carson Beck interception.
That's insane.
His 6 losses have all come with him with basically the ball in his hand.
Well, I guess everyone has their signature play, everybody's got that,
I guess so. So I don't know what teams are
Yikes.
necessarily looking for that, but a look, and I will get this out of the way. We've been very critical of Miami and everything in the process. Miami proved that they belonged in this tournament, and it was never about Miami getting in. That was the problem. It was the process. It was the teams, honestly, it was the teams at 8 and 9 that I had more of a problem with. But it was the process. But Miami got in, as they probably should have been, maybe at or above us the whole time. And they proved they belong. They beat every team in front of them. They beat 2 SEC teams. They beat the defending national champions, and they came within 6 of this national champion team who didn't have a blemish on their schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give all the credit in the world to the Miami Hurricanes. Like they earned what they got. We'll talk about Indiana, but Sean, any thoughts on the Hurricanes in their season?
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, like you said, it was more them, like kind of the way they got in, and if they deserved to be there, then they should have just been there the whole time. And it was just kind of this whole show, at the end, I wasn't a big part of. But yeah, you kind of look at the tournament as a whole, and I was kind of looking at it, and I was trying to remember, like, how many of these matchups were, like, great games. You know what I mean? Like, I was trying to look, and I mean, obviously you get some.
Not a lot.
No, there was a lot of laughers in the tournament, and games with Ole Miss seemed to kind of. I mean, Miami had some close. I mean, obviously the Ohio State game was competitive, and I thought the Ole Miss one was for a while too. It just felt like a lot of these teams had kind of fizzled out. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of run their course. So I mean, I'm hoping as a whole. Fortunately for college football, they got a real good championship game. Like I know, It
Yeah.
wasn't back and forth like, taking, lead changes, but at least it was a very competitive game, and it was exciting, and it was loud. And um, man, did you see the ticket prices that those seats were going for?
Absolute,
Insane.
absolute insanity, and the fact that you're in Miami,
They
and
said
it was still
4,000 some
70%.
for the
It was
top
still
row.
like 70, yeah, 4,000, and it was still 70% Indiana fans. I mean, people people cashed in on this kind of once in a lifetime
Right.
opportunity situation, and it's capitalism at work.
Right. And I think the one takeaway in that game, and the play. I mean, obviously everybody talks about Mendoza's fourth down run and getting in the end zone. But I mean, obviously the turning point in that game, the point where it really was a special teams play.
Yeah.
And I didn't really bring up last week, probably because Indiana had just smoldered Oregon, and I didn't really get to bring it up. But the one thing about this Indiana team and the coaching, that it's a complete program. Like the overhaul was in the entirety, like understanding the importance of special teams, setting up with good kick returns. The punter for Indiana in the national championship game had a couple of kicks that really, really put Miami's back up against the wall.
Yeah.
And one of them actually set that blocked punt up.
It
And
did,
so,
yeah.
and so, when you factor in a team that plays as good as they do on both sides of the ball, and they're going to beat you on special teams almost every time, I mean, that's a true national champion. That's a team that's very hard to beat, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, and let's talk about them, and we're gonna look back in a minute once we close the book on this game, on our season predictions. Spoiler alert, not good.
Not great.
And we'll kind of put a bow on the college season, and there's things we'll talk about in our off-season shows about how can college football change or fix things to maybe prevent some of these lame duck games in the postseason, but we'll get there. But Indiana, yeah, I mean, heck of a turnaround. Kurt Signetti been there 2 years. Last year gets to the first round of the postseason. Y'all can Google. Everybody's big on Google now with Kirk Signetti. You can Google who beat Indiana last year in the playoff. Last team to beat them, by the way. But I mean, just an unbelievable turnaround, and there's a lot of people want to kind of prognosticate and put banners on certain things in certain ways, and some people want to say this is the best team ever. I don't think it's the best team ever.
Yeah,
but
that's not pushing.
No, it's a hell of a turnaround, and look, I understand that this turnaround doesn't happen in a pre-transfer portal NIL college football.
No.
But for all of the things that college football maybe currently gets wrong, seeing a turnaround like this is great. And I said this earlier to my wife. We were talking about how cool it is to see Indiana win. And you look at the last 3 years, the last three Big Ten, or the Big Ten national champions. Two of those three teams 5 years ago, you would not have 10 years ago, you wouldn't have imagined would be national champions. Like Indiana had never won one, and no offense to Michigan, they hadn't won one since the mid 90s.
Right.
But it felt for a very long time like college football was just stuck in this this here's your 4 or 5 best teams and you're going to like it and deal with it. And now we don't know what's going to happen. So for a lot of what college football gets wrong, this Indiana team and Kurt Signetti and the way that they built this team, and you can be mad about it if you want. It's the reality of where we are in college football. They built in the trenches. They built in the right positions on both sides of the ball and in special teams. And it resulted in 2 really great years of college football for the Indiana Hoosiers and a 16-0 national championship in beating good teams along the way and proving that they were there and deserved it throughout this postseason.
Yeah, and that transfer portal is going to do the opposite for programs that aren't performing well or
right.
are crumbling, right? If you have a program that's crumbling, guys are going to leave. Like the attention span and the patience level of kids in the realm of like 18 to 24, I'd imagine is incredibly short, right? So
Right.
they're going to look at what have you done lately, not and props to the Notre Dames and the Michigans and even the Ohio States and some of these schools that are still able to sell the tradition on top of it and kind of use that as. But I think you're using that more as like icing on the cake now. Like, hey, here's what we're doing now. Here's how fast you'll look. Here's how many times you'll be on TV. Here's your NIL money. Oh, and like you're going to get mentioned among some of football's greats. Like that's it's just extra now. I
Right.
don't think people are shooting for it. But if people want to put best on this season, I'd go with what you're saying. I don't think this is just a good turnaround. This is by far the best turnaround in college football history. And like you said, the modern era helps that. But man, like a 2-year, like what was the stat you sent us in the chat that since in his 2 years, Signetti is now responsible for 5%
5% of
Indiana's all-time college football wins.
Yeah, they've been playing since 1887,
which is insane. If you want to have any idea how bad Indiana has been over the course of history, like the Phillies take a lot of crap in Major League Baseball because they've played so long that they have so many losses. Indiana has all the losses, and they play way less games than the Phillies. Right. And so for him to come in and I mean 5%. What? Like you sent that and like that can't be correct. You didn't move a decimal point, but it definitely is correct.
Look, I didn't actually look it up to see if that is accurate, but it certainly could be. I mean, like it is unreal.
Know the history. I mean, even just in our lifetime, how bad Indiana is a laughing stock. Like that was like a team you scheduled on homecoming so you could kill them. Like and that's pretty much just how it is. And now all of a sudden, and I know we're not necessarily at one of the big takeaways, but one of my big takeaways for college football of the years, you look at the state of Indiana, and now that tiny state in the middle of the country has 2 very good football programs, which is something a lot of larger states can't say.
Yeah, and look, I'm not going to make this part of this segment about us.
No,
but yeah, I mean, you have the longest winning streak in college football, 16 games. The second longest winning streak in college football is 10 games, and it's the other team in Indiana.
They're both in Indiana. Sorry, Purdue.
And I jokingly like tweeted out last night, like, congrats to Indiana and the second best coach in the state, on your national championship. And don't get me wrong, I do believe that Marcus Freeman is the better coach, but Curt Signetti is already up there with the best. Now it's obviously a short window and he's going to have to keep proving it. But there's no reason to believe, at least over the next 2 to 3 years, that he can't and they can't. So just an absolute a tremendous season from them and Mendoza. And look, you look at his numbers from last night: 16 and 27, 186 yards. He added a rushing touchdown. Now he shows his 7 carries for -8 yards, but I think college football does sacks as rushing yards, which never makes sense to me. But here's the thing: there was a few times in the game where a couple of passes almost went the wrong way. But early on, Miami was getting at him, hitting him hard, hitting him illegally, by the way. And I'm not going to make this about any officiating, but boy, was Miami getting away with quite a bit in that game, including what should have been a targeting penalty early in that game. But Mendoza again shakes it off. And, when they needed him the most, he proved that. Look, I still think Jeremiah Love should have been the Heisman Trophy winner, but so many times we have seen a Heisman Trophy winner come out and in their bowl game or a playoff game or national title game, and they almost tell you, maybe I didn't deserve this award. We didn't see that from Mendoza at all.
In any of their games, but especially in the biggest moments last night. So credit to him. Unfortunately for him, it probably means you're a Raider, but congratulations, kid, you earned it. You get that big money, and I also really was impressed by I know he didn't have any like record-setting day, but the running back for Indiana, obviously the big touchdown came from Miami in the running game, but I mean, that kid can play.
Yeah, Kalen Black, 17 carries, 79 yards. Roman Henby, 19 carries for 60. You know, they moved the ball on the ground, and kind of kept Miami's playmakers. Now, granted,
Well, yeah, and that's what I was going to say. They
Fletcher had the 2 rushing touchdowns, but Malachi
I
Tony
alluded to Tony and the stars and the speed and the big plays. And if you have the ball, those guys can't do that.
Right.
So by churning a lot of clock and, ironically, that's probably, kind of the respect for Miami and the risk that you could let the game get away may be part of the reason that game stayed as close as it did. Because he was much more okay with just keeping them off the field and churning out points the old fashioned way instead of trying to, really hammer it home like he did against Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw the big strike at times with Miami. Time of possession 36-24 for Indiana, 23-36 for Miami, and I think that's it. That's a huge part.
Man, that Tony end around, man, that kid can fly.
Sure can. And you saw a 57-yard touchdown run by Fletcher, a 22-yard touchdown pass to Malachi Tony. So like they had some bigger plays, quicker plays, and
it's barely 18.
Yeah, those were the points where you're like, man, Miami's really staying alive in this one. Like I said, credit to them. But Sean, any other thoughts on the game itself last night?
No, I think we covered it again. But props to Indiana, way to go! Unbelievable story for college football, and thank you for winning one for the good guys.
Yeah, absolutely, and man, I pulled up like the season by season of the Indiana Hoosiers football, and there's not a lot of winning seasons there, Sean. So that stat about Kurt Cignetti, that might just be accurate. I don't do the quickest math, but
what'd they do? They 16 this year.
16 this year, 11 last year. So he has 28. He's 28-2 in 2 seasons.
Okay, 28-2
or 27.
Right.
Yeah, 27 and 2 in 2 years.
Does your list say how many total wins the program has?
515. So let's
515. So take your 27 divided by 515.
Divided by 515. Yep, 5.24%.
Insane.
That's wild.
More than 5.
Yeah, that's a little north of 5%. Wow, that's great for Cignetti.
That is 500 wins.
That is 500 wins.
Been playing since 1885.
Since 1887. I don't want to shortchange.
I mean, I know they didn't always play 16 games or 12 games, even 12 games. Obviously,
no.
I probably used to play 6, maybe 4.
Yeah, Notre Dame's been playing since 1887 as well. Let's see how many wins.
So 515 is the number at
Notre Dame has 992 wins, by the way.
So almost double.
Almost double.
Oh God!
So we're gonna pass 1,000 wins next year.
That's pretty great.
Let me rephrase. We should pass 1,000 wins next year.
We should pass 1,000, assuming the NCAA lets us play. I guess.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Who knows?
We're not in a conference or anything. Yeah. Let's look back here. So I pulled the predictions, the college football prediction. You can go back, and if you want to go back and have a good chuckle, you can go back to the end of August and see our college football preview show where we give these full predictions. EJ had 2 exact picks. Now, again, this is your Power 4 conference champions, Heisman Trophy, your 12 playoff teams, semifinal games, national championship game, and national champion winner. EJ had 2 exact picks. The exact picks were SEC champion Georgia and number 2 seed Ohio State. He added Georgia in the playoff and Oregon in the playoff for 4 total picks correct.
That's more than most seasons. Way to go, EJ.
It's actually a new record for EJ. Mike had 1 exact pick that was Ohio State as your 2 seed. He added 3 more Three more correct playoff teams: Georgia, Oregon, and unfortunately Alabama. For
Alabama
for 4 exact picks, or 4 total picks. I had 0 exact, by the way, 0 exact. I had 4 playoff teams: Ohio State, Georgia, unfortunately again,
Alabama
and Oregon. Now, Sean, you had 1 exact. You had Georgia as the 3 seed.
Nice.
But you also added Ohio State. You added
Miami
in the playoff, Oregon in the playoff, and
Alabama
in the playoff. So you had 1 exact, 5 total. You were the winner of all of those things we predicted. The winner has 5 teams. Nobody. EJ was the only person to have any conference champion predictions correct.
That's incredible.
Nobody got the Heisman. Nobody predicted the national champion.
Can't believe nobody had the Heisman. I mean, I know I took the Manning hype very literally. I bought in.
Me and Mike took Jeremiah Love. Me and Mike picked the guy who should have won it. EJ took Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, and you had Arch Manning. So
yeah, I remember Nussmeier was in, and early on, I thought he had it.
If you want to laugh about more predictions in hindsight, a few weeks from now, we will look back on our NFL prediction.
Should be
similar. Be similar. But Sean, now as we get ready to close the book on college football for the year, wild that we're at this point. What's your biggest takeaway from this season?
Well, I mean, the biggest takeaway, beyond talking about the playoff itself and the reorganizing it. I mean, the big takeaway is the transfer portal era is here.
Yeah.
We talked about some of the things that made it fun. The ability for the turnaround, kind of the unpredictability, no chance for schools to just kind of sit for just accept mediocrity. I don't think any of that's a possibility anymore. Now, what this might do is it might really destroy some of the negatives, might really destroy some of the middle ground in some of these conferences,
right?
Where you have teams that are competitive but not winning the conference. The SEC's got a ton. Big Ten's got several. And you got teams that will challenge and might upset some people. If they're losing all their stars, they might not. And you're going to see these, I worry for the possibility of an almost Dodgers-like situation where if a school does have substantial funds that they could kind of buy stars from smaller places and just really build something special. But let's hope that kids in general just want to play and kind of don't take that money. The other negative, and it's an interesting story I was just reading before I came on, is out of Duke. And their quarterback, Darian Mensah, who is attempting to transfer out of Duke despite saying he would stay for a second year.
Mm-hmm.
And Duke is arguing that he signed a 2-year contract, which gave them name and image likeness rights for 25 and 26. And so by him entering to leave, he's in breach of contract. And I've been saying this all year as people started entering. I'm like, what kind of things are these kids signing? It's not really setting them up much for a future, especially in an industry that is all contracts, right? It's you get paid, you play. If you don't play well, you're gone. And your employer can terminate a contract at any time. You cannot, unless you're simply quitting, right?
Sure.
That's the only option you have. You can't be, I don't want to play anymore for the Giants. I want to. You can demand a trade.
You have to do that before you sign, like Eli Manning did.
Right. You can, and teams, obviously players will demand a trade, but, if the team doesn't want to, your only option is, well, then I'm not playing. Right. And then you're not making money. Right. So you're kind of setting this up. I think there's a lot of kids. And I think Duke's got a real strong case. I'm reading it and I'm like, man, he might be in a little bit of trouble here. And if he does this, then I'd be willing to bet that there's dozens of those 6,000 kids in the transfer portal.
Well, you almost had
the same thing.
You almost had that similar situation with the I think, was it a quarterback about Washington who was coming back and then was transferring out, and then I think there was kind of a threat of a lawsuit, and he's going back. So look, yeah, it's funny. My a colleague of mine and I were talking about this today, and the for as good as the environment of college football and the unpredictability of it, there is going to be an ugly side, and the college football hadn't put any guide rails or restrictions or caps on things, and I said to my colleague today, I said, look, I actually think that's a good thing, because we're going to see where the flaws are. Now, in the next probably 1 to 3 years, we're going to start seeing some perimeters put on this thing. We're going to start reeling it in. But to college football's credit, and we have said many times what college football does wrong, and rightly so. But
rightly so.
But what I think what they got right by letting it be the Wild West is because it allowed it to get as crazy it can get, and then you can reel it in by seeing where the mistakes are. The problem, if you would have put all the restrictions on at the start, and I know this probably sounds crazy to some people, is you put restrictions on at the start, and then you go, well, let's start loosening this up over here, and maybe let guys try and like push the limits over here, and eventually the levee breaks, and then you're trying to play damage control. Now it's like, look, it's been crazy since the beginning, so now we got to tighten up the contract thing, and we have to make sure that there's better control on what's happening with these guys once they sign their deals and this, that, and the other. So I'll be curious to see how this offseason plays out with it. But yeah, it's there's some ugliness. There is some ugliness.
And I don't want it to sound, I mean, I know I really pushed the negative there. Mostly just because it's not something
we've never seen
are saying yet. They're not, everybody's kind of excited right now and kind of digging it. And I am all for these kids getting paid, and I am all for, guys that, had to sneak around and do it. Like, I mean, they should have been getting paid too.
Right.
Like, should Reggie Bush get his Heisman back? Probably. But
that's such a hard
one because
of
where the
rule wrong when he did it. Right. Like,
right. But I mean, he was just trying to do what everybody else was doing. And for kind of the future, I think it's something to keep an eye on, because they are contracts. And I kind of said that right from the get-go when the transfer portal started blowing up. I was like, well, aren't these guys getting paid by the school they're leaving? Like are they 1-year deals? And then I realized they weren't. And I'm like, how is this even legal? Like, how is nobody suing these guys? And, it's probably something that's going to have to go way farther into the verbiage of like, I mean, they're going to have to put it plain and simple. Like, if you breach this contract and you don't stay in this, especially guys that are doing like market deals, like in the Southwest or something, and they have a deal with a company that's only there, transferring to like Michigan doesn't help them.
Right.
And so now you've breached, and so I think they're going to start putting stuff in where like, we'll pay you this much money, but if you leave early, we're going to want that money back.
Right. Yeah. And that's that has potential for,
or backload most of the money. Like, where you're not going to get it until the end of that second year. You're going to get enough to live on, and then the big money is at the end. And if you breach contract, we don't have to give it to you.
Yeah. So that's definitely going to be something to watch.
And then the new companies will have to buy out, and there'll be like a whole thing.
Yeah, and it's something we'll definitely keep an eye on. And if and when the time comes, we'll talk about that in an off-season show for sure. But kind of along the lines of what you said with just where we're at in college football, there's kind of two takeaways, and I think they're kind of like connected. One, the power shift in college football. We've kind of wondered when Michigan wins, like, oh, it's not an SEC team, they didn't play last year. We didn't see an SEC team in the championship game. This year, again, 3 years in a row, not only did an SEC team not win, they weren't even in the final. So I feel like the power shift, and I'm not necessarily like sitting here being like solid stamp, concrete posts in the ground, not even budging, like Big Ten's best conference in college football. I think they are there. I think the gap is tight, and the foundation is still hardening a bit. But I think the power shift is kind of in the rearview mirror. But along those lines, kind of connected, my biggest takeaway and seeing how the playoff thing played out, and we've had our gripes with it. I'm not going to rehash any of that, but I think a playoff expansion is inevitable. Whether it's this offseason or next, I think what you saw with Notre Dame, BYU, I still don't think Vanderbilt really had a strong case, but Vanderbilt, and not that a 3-loss Texas team had a case, but Texas being left out, Tulane and James Madison getting in. Look, again, I don't fault them. They did what they had to do. They got in fair and square. But the way this whole thing played out, and the fact that over the 2 years the 12-team playoff, you've had one team with a bye advance at all. Now, granted, they went on to win the national title this year. I think you're going to probably see an expansion so that there's either less or 0 teams with a bye, because when you're sitting around for that long, you run the potential of not being able to get up off the mat when those games start. I'm not saying I want an expansion. I think 12 is the right number, but based on the things that we've seen over the last 2 years, we're going to get one. And it could possibly come as early as next year, although some of those negotiations have not materialized. So it probably won't be next.
Well, and I think that as far as the buys go, I think a lot of times, like even when you go down past 2 and you're at like 3 and 4, right? Like those teams typically are not the 3 and 4 that have been there all year.
Right.
They're teams that got hot. They kind of taken over the reins there. And so to ask them to sit in the middle of a run, I see what you're saying. And it's the kind of thing where if you wanted to give like maybe make it 2 sides and play in kind of thing and give one bye on each side, like to your 1 and 2, maybe that's the case, because those teams a lot of times have been sitting there for a while.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, some teams are going to benefit it and some don't, but that happens at the NFL level too. But yeah, you just kind of have this wall of buys in the middle of it, and it's a little strange to not only look at, but to expect a lot out of. Like you said, not every team's going to respond well to it.
No, absolutely not. But man, it was a wild year of college football. Certainly would have wished at least one thing would have went a different way, at least at the beginning of the month of December. But a heck of a year. Congratulations again to the Indiana Hoosiers, your 16-0 2026 college football playoff national champions. But